guys, so today I'm talking. Alright guys, so this is the final episode of the 6-liter engine build-up, at least for just the engine on its own. It is loaded up. It's about 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning now. Taking it, loading it up. A couple things to note: to get this thing ready to go to the dyno, you've got to take off a bunch of the accessories that just are not needed on the dyno. In this case, took the flex plate off, took my headers off, took my carburetor off, and left everything else. Everything else is fine. Depending on where you go to dyno your engine, they might need more stuff, might need less. That just depends. But generally, you want to talk to your dyno operator and ask them what they want, or already know what they want, and then come prepared with that. The other thing to note is you got to make sure everything's plugged off. As we saw, if you start the engine and it's not plugged, you can make a huge mess. And it's even worse if you do it at someone's dyno cell. So I went through, triple checked that all my oil passages, every single thing that could leak is sealed or has a hose connection, so that when I get to the dyno, it then just gets plugged in and we're done. It's ready to go. A huge advantage for going to the dyno is going to be making sure your engine runs on a stand before you ever take it. Some engines are easier to do that with, others aren't. Small block Chevy, big block Chevy, LS are pretty easy, just because you don't need the bell housing to mount your starter. It just depends on how you feel. I prefer to run them before I go because it costs money to go to the dyno, and it also takes time out of your day. You got to make sure everything's square, and you don't want to waste their time as much as you don't want to waste your own. So that's something that works both ways. They don't want to fix things that you should have already had done before you go, and that seems pretty simple, but common sense ain't that common. Other than that, just went and got a couple extra things, went and picked up some extra oil in case I need it, picked up an extra filter in case the one I have needed to get changed, triple checked all my connections, made sure that everything I have sort of jives before I go, and just be ready, you know. Going to the dyno, I was pretty confident in my build, even though I was kind of joking with the guys that, like, as long as this thing doesn't scatter, I'm hoping for the best. I'm pretty confident in building the LS engines now. After I got done with the first 5.3 and it didn't explode, I was like, all right, this is doable. But still, you know, you get a little nervous. You're not sure how it's going to behave. You know, fresh engine, fresh dyno session. He gave it a good couple whacks on the engine stand, but I couldn't really get it hot, and that's my concern because I never checked piston to valve clearance on the piston to the valve, and when the engine gets hot, the valve grows just a little bit. So usually you want to know how much you got, but I never checked, so it was good. It's going to be a good one. Other than that, just got to take off. I'll show you guys a video when I get there, kind of walk through, or depending on how we're getting stuff done, I might just do like a time lapse so that I'm not getting in their way. And I'm going to KLEIN Engines. They're one of the big engine builders here in Arizona. They do great work. They do a lot of my machine work personally. They did all the machine work that actually needs to be done on this block. And they're great to work with. He's Robert down there. He's willing to share when he can. And he's been helpful in helping me try and figure out how to build this thing. So yeah, I'll see you guys at the dyno.
repeated itself.
That's good.
So, out of the breather, she's dripping some oil. But we're turning the shit out of it. So,
what are you sending it to?
I turned it to 68 that time.
Oh, okay.
So in drag racing, 500 RPM past its max horsepower if you want to do it that way on hydraulic roller.
Okay.
So realistically, I turn this motor 7,400 for the lights.
All right, we survived the dyno, guys, and we did pretty good considering that from the beginning to the end, this engine was built right here in my garage by me. So this is doable, and I don't really have too much experience building engines considering this is my second one, and proof is in the pudding, luckily. So let's talk numbers. First of all, I still have an engine, so that's good. Didn't scatter it, didn't do anything stupid on the dyno. It leaked a little bit of water out of the coolant bypass on top, but that's because I didn't pipe dope this fitting up here. That's on me. I was in a rush and I just shoved it in there and thought it would seal. Didn't. It was a small drip and it's water. Luckily water dries up and this gets really hot in the dyno cell, just like in a car, so it didn't take too long for it to dry up. That wasn't a huge issue. No oil leaks other than I have just this dash 10 fitting on this oil cap breather right now. So when we got up in the RPMs and you saw in the video that this spit out a little bit of oil, which is common in the dyno cell. Robert told me that that happens. They're gonna breathe a little bit, especially when you're running them up that high. So numbers wise, we're gonna call this a 470 horsepower engine. Not because that's the max number, but because from where I'm gonna actually be driving this thing, if I ever hit the RPM where it's actually making peak power, I'm driving like a moron on the street in regular traffic. So let's talk about it. This is the graph. I showed it in the video briefly, but that is the graph. Not sure how well the GoPro's picking that up, but it held torque very well. That's this line right here. Pretty flat curve. It's not the smoothest thing in the world, but that was more due to it sort of fluctuating with the pull. But we were holding a little more than 450 foot-pounds of torque from 4,500 on through about 5,500, and then almost the whole graph all the way up to about 6,500 we were holding above 400 foot-pounds of torque. So that in itself is pretty good. That's going to make it really move with a lot more, what's the word, attitude, a lot more aggressively. So that's good. Torque is usually the thing that's important. Horsepower is generated from what your torque is. So I don't know all the science and math behind it, but that's what I understand. Horsepower wise, you can see it's a pretty linear graph. Climbs from 3,000 on, and we stayed just shy of 500 basically all the way up at the peaks. So we smashed what I was expecting, which was either a blow up or 430, 440 horsepower. That's really good for an NA motor. I mean, if you're talking about just a stock 6-liter with a cam in it, that's about probably what you'd expect anyway. So I'm not mad. It made what it was supposed to, and it gained where I wanted it to. Peak horsepower, according to this, and we maxed it out at 6,900 RPM, is 495.1 horsepower. And that was at 6,200 RPM. And it kind of kept making about 493, 494. At 6,900 it was making 488.5, when we were in the dyno cell, and you can hear it in the clip, I don't know how well you can hear it and how clear, but he told me that, hey, you're going to want to shift this thing at about 7,400, which is 500 past max horsepower, which adds up here. So the reason you would do that, and I asked him, was you'll want to go just past it so that when you shift and the gear drops down the RPM with the converter, you're then right back in the meat of the power band. And you wouldn't necessarily do it on the shift. He's saying through the lights you'd want to be turning that RPM, which this car shouldn't have an issue with. This thing turns a pretty good amount of RPM, especially now that I'm using the trans brake. Other than that, I'm honestly not mad. Oil pressure held up great. I'm glad that it actually prints it out on this. We saw a max of about 65 PSI all the way through 6,900 RPM. Could we improve that by putting a different spring in the oil pump? We could, but is there a real reason to? Not really, I asked. I didn't ask him about it, but he would have said something if there was an issue. It seemed like it was holding oil pressure about where we expected it to. And at 3,000 RPM, in case you're wondering, it's making 231 horsepower NA. And then at 4,000, 333, 5,000, 436, 6,000, 488, and then 6,200 is the max at 495. So it's making it, and it's holding torque. It's doing all the right things that I would hope him to do. Sounded great on the dyno, and get out of your moth. The great part is that this is the lowest amount of horsepower that this is going to make unless I break it. So I kind of want to take it to a chassis dyno once we put the turbo on it, and then see if the turbo makes up for all the losses of the drivetrain and accessory drive, or if I just keep making more horsepower on top. But once I pull this engine out, we got an important stop. Got to go down to Hughes. Got to get the transmission checked out. Got to get everything done, and then put it all back in the engine. Plus, I got some things going on with the turbo. Other than that, I'll leave it there. This is a success. Those are the numbers. Hopefully you guys can see it all. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Like, comment, subscribe if you can. Let me know if your horsepower guess was right, or actually I'll look at them and see if you were right. I'll probably give a thumbs up to all the people who are actually close.